Five, four, three, two, one, zero. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, everyone. Today we have with us a living legend. We got NBA Hall of Famer, 5-time NBA All-Star, 2-time NBA All-Defensive Player of the Year. It just goes on and on. The man's got his jersey retired by the Milwaukee Bucks, the Arkansas Razorbacks, and we are so excited to have him on today. He's also an author of, over 10 books, I believe?
Yeah, 12 books, yes.
12 books. So, yeah, we're going to get into all of that. How are you doing today, Sidney?
Hey, Larry, man, I'm doing great. The best part of that introduction was you said he is a living, so I'm living.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's great. Yeah.
Legend part, just so I'm living.
Hey,
Hey,
that's
great.
You're looking healthy, man. You're looking good, man. Like you hit that gym and stuff.
I feel good. Lift weights a little bit, do my walking in the morning. I do a sauna, a whirlpool, a cold dip, at least 4 to 5 days per week. So I'm just trying to live my best life.
How do you feel about that cold plunge? I know it's a lot of people are doing it now for recovery and stuff. What do you think on that?
Well, the key is plunge.
How long have you made it so far? What's the longest you made it in?
I only try to do it about 3 minutes. I've done probably like 5 minutes. But since I'm not training for any competition or playing in the NBA any longer, I think for me, 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes is a perfect time. Sure is.
Yeah, ain't bad. But yeah, we'll start off and just I know you're married, and I know you have kids, so I just want to kind of talk about your family and where you're from and everything.
I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. That's where I am right now.
Yes,
Little Rock, hometown. Lived in a number of places, including Milwaukee, Phoenix. Lived in Dallas for a lot of years, but Little Rock is home. I have 5 kids, 4 boys, and I hate to say 4 boys and 1 girl because they're all 30 years old and older.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
they're always your what? They're always your kids.
Yeah.
I have 7 grandkids, and that's exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really exciting because I was talking to my daughter-in-law this morning. She called. I was still in the bed, like I'm just still in the bed. I'm not asleep. I'm in the bed, and she said, "Your grandson wants to write a book. They did a lesson on entrepreneurship in his class, and he's really interested in entrepreneurship, and so he wants to write a book." So I've been working this morning on an outline for my next book, which would be a children's book. And it's going to be called something like Whiz Kids Teaches Grandpa the Biz. So I'm going to take
That's good.
I know we're going to do a little entrepreneurship for kids. And so that's always creating, always having fun in life. And so everything is good.
That's awesome. So you can already see your influence in their lives because they see that, you didn't just play sports, you also write books and you're also involved in business and they're picking up on that. So that's awesome.
Just so they don't pick up on my bad habits. Just a good
right? Hey, that's all. That's what we all hope for all of us, right?
We only show them the good habits. We keep the other habits in the dark a little sometimes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
yes,
don't worry
sir.
about me being a knucklehead in my 20s. Y'all don't worry about that. Yeah, my kids, they could just, do as I say, not as I do.
In his 20s, he was winning Defensive Player of the Year 2 times in a row. So.
Yeah, they can do as you in the 20s.
That was very interesting. Now, I think the kid, the big center for Minnesota, he's 4 times defensive player, which is for a big guy. I'm not impressed for a big guy.
Yeah. Being 6'4", winning the first 2 that's ever been made is pretty impressive. At 6'4", that's fantastic.
Yeah. Anybody that's 6'6" and under is very impressive. Dennis Rodman, I think, Michael Jordan, and you have so many great defenders. to play in the NBA. And then a lot of defenders never made Defensive Player of the Year, which happens
Yeah.
sometimes. I'm very, very fortunate to be named for the first two.
Yeah, that was something new that I learned just recently doing some research on your career. Was you won the first two that was ever around. That's a crazy thing to to have.
You need to call it the Sidney Moncrief Award.
No, I think I really seriously. People think I'm being modest, but I'm not trying to be modest. I really think they didn't know exactly what to look for the first two. And they just had a number of names on the wall, and they just took a dart. Number of good defenders, not anybody, and they took a dart, and boom, they hit my name the first time, and then the second time, two in a row.
No, I think you're modest because man, all the greats have so many things to say about you guarding them and how much of you hounded them and how you made them go for that second and third opportunity because their first wasn't there and things like that, and it's something that you don't see as much anymore.
The best ever actually had this to say about you. When you play against Moncrief, you're in for a night of all around basketball. He'll hound you wherever you go. That's Michael Jordan himself saying that in an interview.
Yes. He should have completed it. He'll hound you everywhere you go, but when he guards me, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to get 30.
Well, for MJ, he had to deal with you knocking him out of the playoffs early on, and then after that, he has to go get punched in the face and ribs or whatever by the bad boys. So y'all really prepped him very well to deal with everything,
Oh yeah. And then he had to go against Dennis Johnson and the Celtics.
Yeah.
He had some really. First time he scored 60, I think in the playoffs, it was against the Celtics, which was very impressive. 63. I was watching that game, and the way he scored 63, it was like someone scoring 12. It was just
it's crazy.
A great defensive team with length. And he was able to, and one of the best defensive guards in the history, Dennis Johnson. That was pretty impressive.
Speaking of that, too, you led a team that swept them in the 80s that isn't talked about enough because in the 80s Celtics, obviously, they were a force to be reckoned with, and you came in and led your team to a sweep against them.
Yeah, that was exciting. They've beaten us so many times in the playoffs. We would beat Philadelphia. We would beat Boston. Then guess what? Philadelphia's right there. Or we would beat Philly. Guess who's there? Right. We would beat Boston. Philly was out there. Beat Philly. Boston was right there. It was just tough. The Eastern Conference was a very difficult conference.
Then you make it to the finals, you got to deal with the Lakers, or whatever, which was interesting because Jerry West, they wanted you on the Lakers, right?
Not really. They considered Magic, Moncrief. That's a no-brainer. Not again. Magic was a generational talent and had so much charisma, but he could play. People talk about his charisma. He knew how to play the game of basketball. He was special. It would never be another. Sometimes you say there will never be another. There will certainly never be another Magic Johnson, and not in my lifetime. So he was a special player. I didn't expect they would take me.
Yeah, that's fair because with his height and the way he played like a guard, that was before his time, and still nobody's doing it like he did, right? But yeah, it was something to see. But I guess before we go into all that, let's take it back just a little bit to the Razorbacks and your time there under Eddie Sutton and all of that. What was your most memorable moment playing for the Hogs back in those days and getting them? They weren't doing too hot, and then the triplets, y'all came in and y'all took them to a Final Four. But then again, you had to play against that second run. Y'all went against Larry Bird, and then before that, you had a good Kentucky team you had to go against. But tell us about what was the memorable moments you had there.
It was like in college, unlike the NBA. If someone asked me a memorable NBA experience, I would have trouble with it because you play so many games.
Yeah.
But in college, you play limited number of games, and your teammates, you're like this because you spend 3.5 hours of practice together, 7 days per week. And then you travel together. We went to South America at one point together. So those guys were special when you play in college. And I always say my greatest experience is always kind of like non-basketball, although it was brought about because of basketball. But my greatest moments is when we would land, when we were rocking and rolling. We would be in that little Skyways small aircraft that was scary to ride in. See the 17 people, it's like, and flying into Drake Field. Back then it was Drake Field, and it was a hill, and you have to go over the hill and then drop down to the runway. And we might be midnight, it might be 1 o'clock in the morning. The plane lands, and there are fans waiting for the team. Hundreds, I'm not saying not thousands of fans, but 100 or so fans just waiting on the team to land. They were just cheering for the Hogs. They do the hog call. We get off the airplane. They're like, way to go, way to win. And those were the days where fans were fans. I'm telling you, they were just really there for the Razorbacks. And that's the greatest memory is how we were able to engage and make the state of Arkansas proud of the way we perform on the national stage. And that will always be my greatest memory is looking out the window and saying, wow, look at those people out there. Like, awesome. I would be asleep somewhere. But yeah,
that's awesome.
It was great. It was an awesome feeling.
That is pretty cool.
Tell us about, what Eddie Sutton taught you, and not just necessarily basketball wise, but life wise, and what your relationship was with him.
Oh yeah, well, Coach Sutton was the ultimate coach, teaching you life principles. That's before they had life skills in college. We were taught life skills, and everything we did from practice to going to class to how you treated your teammates. And then he had 2 very capable assistants, Gene Cady and Pat Foster at the time. And they instilled in us a very high standard for work ethic. They instilled in us that you can push yourself further than what you think, or they pushed us further than what we think we could go. It's like we were ready to do none. But I was talking to Coach Foster the other day, and I told him I was jogging the other day real slowly up a hill. And I said, but it's like the hill that you all had us running up at the side of Razorback Stadium, Reynolds Stadium. The hill that's on the east side, the west side of the stadium, right? That was our workout. We would have to go up, jog up that hill, all the way up to the hill, all the way up. And we walk back down, jog all the way up, not just jog slowly. We had workouts that were brutal, punishing workouts, but it did instill a mental toughness in us that most teams didn't have during that time.
Dang, yeah. We used to have bleachers we had to run, and they were like not the right size as one of those old gyms in Guy, Arkansas. I don't know if you've been through there at all, but
yeah, I know where Guy is.
Yeah, we had that old gym.
Yeah, well, we had the hill, then we had to run, then we went to the track. Back then, I guess the track still is in the same place, but it's not as nice as it is now. But then we would have to run the track sprints, and Mike Young and Lawson Pilgrim, when we did the distance, they were like, I don't know, they could just run, and I prided myself in coming in first and everything. That was I wanted to win everything. I couldn't quite get the mile down against those guys. They would just put it on me, and I was like second or third place, knowing I had no shot of coming in first until we got on the court for wind sprints and our suicides. That's when I could reclaim first place, but not distance. Yeah. It was like they were distance people. Basically, they could run cross country, and I just would always say, God, I want to come in first place, but just couldn't quite do it. So all the things we did with conditioning back then, I think, I know Kentucky, they were big into weightlifting. We were one of the first colleges to adopt weightlifting at the level that we did when I was a freshman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
we sure were.
interesting.
We were not the first. We were one of the first.
Yeah.
And they had the Nautilus machines, and back then we had to do everything, all the weightlifting we had to do at the football place with Dean Weber in that section, and
Okay.
Mike McDonald. You sure did. But yeah, that was really good. We had the best training, the best food, and certainly the best fans during that time.
Yes. What was the recruiting like back then? Obviously, it's completely different now. But did Coach Sutton call your parents and talk to you, or how was that? How did that go about?
Well, back then you had your assistants are always your primary recruiters, and then the head coach is the closer. One of those kind of deals,
Yeah.
The head coach would visit your home, your mom and father, and talk to everybody, but the consistent communication was through back for me. Coach Pat Foster was the main person,
Okay.
and then Coach Sutton would come in, meet the parents, and try to close the deal. But recruiting was interesting because we talk about the transfer portal, we talk about name, image, likeness, and I was thinking when I played there, how many guys that were recruited left after the first year, But there were guys that were doing that. Now I think especially for us, when you had a Marvin Deff, Ron Brewer, Sidney Moncrief on the team, and you're recruited, and you think you're going to be a player, you come up there, you look at, and you attend you participate in a couple of practice sessions, and you're like, I won't see anything for the next 2 or 3 years. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I remember one year we had at least 4 guys, maybe 5 to transfer. A couple before even the season, or the season was going on. The season was going on, or after the season.
I feel like back then you had to do it early in your career because you had that penalty and all that, and then you always take that risk during that year out. Or, I mean, you're, keeping your conditioning up and all that. But I'm glad that they did get rid of that penalty, just because of the fact that coaches can leave, coaches can say some things and then do some other things, and so I do like that flexibility. I don't like them bouncing around so much, but I don't know. There's pros and cons. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're in the United States of America, free enterprise system. We have certain democracy. You have the right to decide certain things, and you should have the right to decide where you play basketball, right? And I agree with you. However, it does hurt. It no doubt hurts the quality and consistency of the play in basketball. And we've seen it definitely at Arkansas. We've seen it everywhere, really. And fans can't really lock into a certain player or group of players year in, year out like you could years ago. And I think that hurts because college is different than the pros, or used to be, and it should be. It should have a different feel about it. And the fans should feel closer, that like, I know this player. They should have that feeling because I watched this player from the time they were a freshman up until the time they're junior or senior. And you don't have that. I know it hurts the quality of the game of basketball.
Yeah. Pat, I was listening to the Buzz the other day, and that's what I heard Pat Bradley say. He was saying, you don't feel like the fans don't get the connection to the players. And back in the day, you set your freshman, sophomore year, and then you came in and actually played junior, senior. Kind of, it was your team type of thing. But it's just not that way anymore.
No. I didn't sit. Pat might have stepped. But
No.
He said
I saw that.
for a year, and he
That's
did.
funny.
That's a perfect example of a player that became a great player. I'm not just saying this because he was in a system. He was able to sit, learn, and get better, and get better, and get better. And then when it was his time, he was ready to shine. And that used to be the progression. Years ago, freshmen couldn't even play.
Yeah.
They were ineligible. It wasn't that rule. But then again, I see why they had the rule in place. There were some good things about the rule and then some negative things about it.
Yeah, I can see good and bad, but it is cool, as a fan to see that guy that's sitting the bench, but you see flashes You're like, okay. And then by the time he's an upperclassman, he's out there doing work and getting it in. And that's exciting to see as a fan. It does get tough to every year have to readjust to the new squad, even though it's exciting when you're getting all these good players coming in to see how they'll mix together. But it's tough to them get consistent, before March because they're just getting together, and so.
And the other thing it does, they are and we were student athletes.
Mm-hmm.
There have been so much emphasis when I was coaching college that they are student athletes. You couldn't say my athletes. You had to say my what? Student athletes. But now the way name, image, likeness, transfer portal, they're really just athletes because they're not going to school long enough. You're going to have to hours. You have to keep transferring. And at least I knew that if I played 4 years and averaged so many hours per semester, I'm on the way to graduate. And then when I graduate, if I'm in a good market where fans are great and boosters are great, then I have connections maybe to after I play basketball, which most guys never play in the NBA. So the people don't you shouldn't look at like when they get out of the NBA, they're not going to the NBA. So when they get out of college, now they have an opportunity through their networks to have a life after basketball in a state or city that they're well known. You don't have that. You won't have that ever again, and that's pretty sad.
When you back in your day, when you were coming out of school, did they have as much overseas basketball as they do now? Or?
No, they did not. The overseas options were very limited. It was normally the high end European or the low end some country you never heard of.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Now, so many options now for guys to play overseas, but most players are not good enough. But even forget about the NBA, forget about the G League. Most players in college would never see a roster overseas. That's the reality of it because it's just so many good basketball players, and it's very competitive.
Yeah, I think that it went both ways too. The pipeline going the other way wasn't really as strong because like Arvydas Sabonis didn't come till what is in his 30s, and so his prime years, a lot of people didn't even get to see, kind of thing. So that's a big change these days, where you're looking at the top 10 players in the league. How many are from overseas, not even from here?
Yes, and that's due to a number of things. One, the way we train our players. Number two, when you're AAU has a lot of good qualities. We know that. Mm-hmm. But when you're in a summer AAU program, all you're doing is playing games. You're not really working on your individual game much. You don't have time. So your development cycle is not as good. And players are not as tied to their high school and junior high school teams. If you ask most kids, who do you play for? They might just say the AAU team. They might not even mention the high school team or the junior high school team. So you don't have that influence of a head coach in junior high school like I had with Johnny Greenwood or Coach Oliver Elvis in high school. You don't have those influences, and kids just play, and they play without the strict discipline that their high school or junior high school coach would have them play under. Thus, you get talent, but you don't get a well-refined, fundamentally sound basketball player. And the European players, you get that. You get the AU competition, and then you get the coaching from their coaches, and they coach them a little bit harder than what we do.
Speaking of the fundamentals, I think we hit a home run higher with Coach Cal when it comes to something like that. The little bit he's going to have these players, that's what he's going to be teaching, I feel like. And I think in this day and age of college basketball and the recruiting standpoint, I think he was just the best hire you could possibly get. I mean, it was just a huge hire.
Yeah, it was a great hire. But Matt, we have to understand the fundamentals are built in junior high school.
Yes, sir.
In high school.
Yeah.
So whatever Musselman or Calipari gets, you have 20 hours. I don't know the restriction. How about you practice now? But it's a restriction. Mm-hmm. You have your you have your professional development time. So they don't really have time. They don't have time. And I found that out when I coached 1 year in college.
Gotcha. Hmm.
I call myself trying to teach the fundamentals, but I wasn't teaching them how to play as a team. You didn't have time. You don't have time to do both. You really don't.
Yeah.
So whatever they bring to you, that foundation is probably what they're going to end up with, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
Speaking of coaching, how come you said there was limited time with them in college, things like that? Why did you step away from that? Did you just kind of decide that was there reasons why you didn't like it as much, or did you did you like business more?
I love college coaching. I just had an opportunity to coach in the NBA that was very unique. And even when I coached in college, they couldn't live up to their financial obligation, because if you're not a big college, sometimes boosters, it's really hard to be competitive with maybe what someone else might pay you. But I tell people all the time, I love college basketball back then. I'm not saying NIL and transfer portal. It would be a little different game. And the people that learn to play the game the fastest will be the winners. And the people that have the most money, the schools that will dedicate the most money, will get the best players. If you get the best players, you probably have the better teams.
Obviously, with social media and just media coverage, it's completely different nowadays. But what was your process on the draft, and what was your mindset on that? That you kind of know, obviously, you knew you was going to be a very top pick, but I didn't know, what your process and stuff was with that.
It's certainly not as thorough as it is now.
Yeah.
I don't remember doing a workout for a team. I was first 5 pick in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
Just didn't. I remember Chicago brought me in just to test my knee. Milwaukee didn't bring me in. New York didn't bring me in. The Lakers did not bring me in. So those were the main teams. Seattle didn't bring me in. One team brought me in to test my leg. Milwaukee sent me to Boston to test my knee. But I didn't have to play or anything. I didn't know where I was going. I wasn't sure where I was going. Only thing I knew was wherever I go, it was going to be cold. It was going to be cold.
Yeah.
New York, Milwaukee, or Detroit. Those were the teams. Let me look up Milwaukee, because I had heard Milwaukee really wanted me. So I looked up, went to the encyclopedia. Back then. You couldn't Google.
Yeah.
You couldn't Google, and you got 10-year-old data, when you go to the encyclopedia, because they're released every 10 years. They update them. So your parents could only afford one set. But whatever set you had was probably 1960 when they first bought them. This is 75 now. So you look up Milwaukee, and an old picture of Milwaukee. So I read a little bit about the city and where it was located. I didn't know where Milwaukee was located. The city, blue collar city, a lot of factories, all this. I read up on the city, and it was very interesting. And I said, okay, I didn't have any idea where I was going otherwise.
So you didn't know until they called your name, is that right?
I didn't really know until I had rumors maybe the day of the draft.
Okay.
I would say I knew probably a little bit before they called my name, but I wasn't for certain. I just saw someone that told me, they're going to make a trade with Detroit, and the Milwaukee Bucks want you.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's when yes.
But you kind of knew going into it too. You had Magic that draft, but I mean, other than that, you were sitting pretty good, as far as the draft board and everything, and how you were at.
Back then, they brought the top 5 potential draft picks to New York. But now they bring the entire town to New York now. Back then.
Yeah.
Dang, I didn't know that. So it's just 5 of y'all.
That's crazy.
Sit there and sweat it out until you hear.
It was Magic, David Greenwood, Bill Cartwright, and myself. Maybe 4. It was 4 or 5. I can't think of the other player, but that's how it went. Greg Kessler.
What an awesome feeling, though. I cannot imagine as a young kid being one of 4 or 5 brought to the just overwhelming feelings, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it was. It was the most amazing thing was being in New York. back then.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend, she was still was she my wife or my girlfriend then? But anyway, I remember us. I don't remember, but I do remember us in New York City. My mom came, my stepfather came. It was really exciting. I remember we said, well, let's go to Central Park. We get in a horse carriage at Central Park, and maybe we started walking. And within three steps, hey, you want to buy some drugs? Next 3 steps, hey, you want to buy some marijuana? That's like back then.
Getting the
Central
whole
Park
experience out there.
it was a little different than now. And I remember us saying, I think we don't want to go through Central Park. Let's go back to the hotel.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So what was the biggest difference after that day? What was the biggest difference from you on that transition from being, a top college player at Arkansas to going to the NBA and walking into that facility there in Milwaukee?
I was different because I didn't really know how good I was. I didn't know how good I was going to be. I just knew I had to compete. Unlike players that are drafted that think they're better than all the NBA players, they think they're it. Mm-hmm. When you have that type of attitude, you get smashed going in because you don't respect the guys that have been there and has been playing the game a lot longer than you have. I wasn't like that. And so I was aggressive, played hard, showed respect to people, came from a great college program. So the transition for me wasn't very difficult because I was prepared. It was still a transition, but it wasn't very difficult. It was all about competing, playing hard. Well, playing hard and competing and respecting the players in front of you.
So it's like you said, and your high school and college coaches kind of prepared you mentally for this, and so you were just ready to show up, work hard, and find your way.
Yeah, because training camp was hard in the NBA back then. It was really hard, but it wasn't any harder than 3.5 hours with Coach Sutton. But some players came from college programs that were not built that way. They were not pushed that way. And I've seen them over the years of when I played in the NBA. So when they get to the NBA, they struggle with the conditioning part. They struggle with competing. They struggle with the speed. The speed of the game is so much faster. The players are not even close to talent level of the players. And if you're not mentally like respecting people and taking that into account, it will be a long time before you get the rhythm of playing in the NBA. You might not ever get it because it is I'll say it one more time, it's a totally different game on such a high level that you can't even imagine how much better players are than college players.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, what was your biggest struggle when you first got up,
My biggest struggle was Coach Nelson told me I wasn't physical enough because in college you couldn't put your hands on people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A person in college, you get a foul called on you. The NBA, you could be a little more physical, and he just told me, hey, you need to close the gap. You need to close the space. Be more physical with people. I only had to hear that once. And so I made the adjustment, and it was okay from then on.
What was your first big purchase with you when you got into the NBA? Was it anything spectacular?
No, for some reason I got a black Oldsmobile Tornado, black on black on black, a black man in a black car. So then bought a house in Milwaukee. So those are my two big purchases when I got into the NBA. Sure was.
That's good. So you had a good head on your shoulders and just went practical.
Well, I didn't want to. My attorney, Jay Dickey, at the time, he said, here's what you should do from Pine Bluff. He said, I want you to buy not a mobile home, a kind of a mobile home, and that way you can move it from Arkansas to Wisconsin. You can stay in Wisconsin. Like, huh? What? I don't think so, Jay.
That's hilarious.
All right, that's a hard pass.
Yeah.
I had a quote that I had read that you had said that you appreciate your accomplishments more now than you did when you were playing. And I figure it's probably because it was your job to do the things that you were doing. But why do you think that is that you appreciate it more now?
Because I wasn't really into records and different things when I played. I was just into playing. I wanted to be the
Yeah,
best player. I wanted to play well. I wanted to have good stats. But I wasn't a stat watcher like guys are now. Some guys were then. Uh,
yeah,
and, and I could do something, have a great game, and forget about it. I could be defensive player of the year and then forget about it. So I was always about the next, what's next, which did not
yeah,
give me time to enjoy what I was doing. It really did. So now when you retire and you're no longer involved in basketball, you get to reflect from a different perspective about what you have accomplished. That's why I appreciate it more now than I did when I
gotcha.
played.
Well, I'm sure that's the kind of mindset you need to have, anyways, when you're playing to keep. I mean, you got to have the mindset to keep doing what you're doing to keep your job, I guess. So I mean, it makes sense.
You do, and it's best if you do, and it's really best if you just realize this is what they pay you for. It's like you see a
Yeah,
football
yeah,
player, a basketball player, and they make a great play, and they go,
yeah,
"This is why they pay you to make
yeah.
a."
I know.
They
Especially
pay
when
you.
you're down 20 and you do something like that. It's like, dude, come
Yeah, yeah. They pay you because I can't make that play, and the other people can't make that play that you just made, which every player should be able to make. Don't celebrate it.
Yeah,
So that's how we kind of came up with. If we were celebrating, it was something major. It wasn't just because
yeah,
a great move or a trick shot or whatever. That's the part I dislike about basketball. And then it filters down to our younger players, and that's the problem.
yes, yeah,
To me,
especially social media nowadays, they
yeah.
want to get the likes and imitate some of the things they're seeing.
My little grandkid was doing. I went to see him play, and he scored a basket. He's like 5 years old. He went. I was like, dude, you're 5 years old. That granddad don't want to ever see you do that. You stand you act
the
like
one
you've done this before, you know.
the one that kills me is when they want to pull the Curry and they want to shoot and then turn around instead of following their shot. They want to turn around and they're like, I know that's
yeah,
in.
Yeah, it's just bad. It's bad for the sport. I don't care who's doing it. And players don't even recognize that. They don't recognize the impact they're having on the younger people that watch them play. And it short circuits those younger kids' ability to be the type of players that they probably could be, because you're looking at some knuckleheads celebrating every little thing they do on the basketball court. They not only that, embarrassing. You're talking down your teammates. You're talking down to your opponent every time you do something. You're in their face. You know that type. When did basketball come to that? We
Yeah.
need to ask ourselves. Yeah, and see football, you don't see that as much. That's why it's a better game.
hmm,
Don't see it in pro football much, but basketball, you see it everywhere. It's like, okay, you made a great play. Who cares? Go to the next one.
yeah,
Football, you get too crazy with stuff like that, and then you're gonna get it the next chance they get, and so you're just setting yourself up for failure if you do that. Did you realize how not only how good you were, but how good when you're getting all these accolades for your defense, how all-time goods these guys are? MJ, Magic, Bird, all these guys that you're defending. Did you realize just like how big that was in the moment, or was it just you were just working and then later on you're like, dang, that was like all-time greats?
Yeah, you have to. It helps when you see other players, because I played and I coached in the NBA. Coached for seven years for 3 different teams. So
Mm-hmm.
it puts it in a little different perspective when you coach and then you play against these guys, and you see you're on the sideline on the bench watching players, quote, great players play night in, night out, and you see the greatness in them, like the LeBron James or that type of player. You see the fact that they're hyped more than they should be because they're not. They're okay players, but the marketplace the social media has made them better than what they really are in comparison. And so, yeah, it's interesting to watch it as a player and then as a former player, as a coach. And you try not to be a hater. That's one thing.
Yeah.
That's one thing you want to guard against being a hater. But at the same time, I was thinking today, everyone should have an opinion, even a former player, right? We should have an opinion. And it's our opinion. It doesn't mean that it's fact. It's fact to us. Matt, Larry, it might not be fact to you, but it's my reality. And I have the right to express it. And just because I express it doesn't mean that I'm a hater because of a certain generation of players. Nothing to do with being a hater. It's just my opinion. And I'm right to give my opinion.
There needs to be more of that these days because everybody wants to disagree and then just argue or call somebody a hater or whatever. But there needs to be more of that. And you know.
Oh, yeah, it should be. Some people say Michael's a great player. Some people say Kareem. Some people say Oscar Robbins. Some people say LeBron James. Oh, okay, you all are right.
Everybody Hall of Famers in these conversations, so it ain't like anybody's in left field, you know.
Yeah, that's your opinion. That's your reality. So you're right.
I heard the other day, J.J. Redick was interviewing Shaq, and Shaq does not have a vote for the MVP award. That's crazy to me. J.J. Redick does. Stephen A. Smith, I believe, does. What's your take on that? Because that is crazy to me. It blows me away. I feel like the best players that ever played should have a vote on that. That's just my say. Writers and journalists, to me, should not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a thought on it. So don't even start me talking because I don't know. I heard that conversation, seriously, the back end of that conversation, but I never dove into it, like the background, what criteria they use to have people vote. But we do know one thing. Doesn't matter who's voting, somebody would know they're wrong or think they're wrong. You know?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I was curious because I don't either. I thought maybe you had some more insight on that because I don't have any clue either. I just caught the interview and was just curious what you thought. So.
Yeah, sometimes if something's too controversial, I don't even read it. Sometimes I do.
I get it. Yeah, that's the perfect time.
I believe in keeping my spirit clean, but I do like to read. I like to read stuff that's controversial also. But that I just sort of did a kind of like this, kept moving.
Makes sense. Right. I got you.
Who's your favorite current player right now that you appreciate their game and that you would love to coach?
I don't know because I don't watch enough basketball. I watch some, and if you start naming players, I was like, yeah, him. You know?
Oh, dang, okay.
But it's not like I'm watching anybody play night in and night out to have a strong opinion. Occasionally I watch a game, maybe some of the game flipping through stations, some of the games on, you see somebody, wow, he's a nice player. I like him, right? And then you might next day, a week later, thought he was a nice player. He's not very good at all. You want to, Well, I don't watch it close enough. If as far as playing both ends of the court, that's what I look at. Mm-hmm. Are you a good teammate? Do you play offense? Are you at least making an effort on defense? You know, are you unselfish? I don't know. There's some out there, but I would just need to sit down with a pencil and see all the rosters and say, oh, yeah, him. But no one just pops in my head. No one.
Gotcha. Fair enough. It's for me, it's been harder to watch because defense, I feel like like offense is really taken off to where everybody can score, but then defense has kind of seemed to take in a back seat. And then I know hand checking went away and all that. And so it seems like all of a sudden playoffs, when teams play decent defense, all of a sudden it's like, oh man, the defense is turned up. But do you, not to bash on that or at all, because we all know rule changes, things like that, it affects it. But I mean, do you feel it's not as fun for you to watch because there's not as many of the two-way guys that everybody's trying to score?
I think when two very, very good NBA teams play, it's the most entertaining sport out there. Easily. We just don't get that very much, Well, when that happens, wow, you really can't pick a better sport. But what has happened with the NBA and analytics is a good thing if it's used correctly, right? I believe in the analytics. When I coached them, we just keep these little basic analytics on what's happening on the course because you need to know what's going on. But, I just don't see the wisdom of driving to the basket, you have a clean layup, passing out to a three-point shooter to shoot a three-pointer. I don't see the reason why a guy gets the ball in the post. He's a good post player. You allow them to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dribbles because you're so concerned about three-point shooters. You don't even give support to that person that's in the paint about to score two points. A lot of things like that, I think, has hurt the game of basketball, made it maybe a little more isolation driven. Even though it was funny, Charles Barkley was talking last night, and he's very smart, knows basketball. But he kept talking about isolation. They're just dribble, shooting basketball. And I would say, hey, Chuck, remember when you were in Phoenix and you were one of the best isolation players ever? And because we did it in Milwaukee, they put 2 players at the top and they first put the zone defense in. So offensively, you put two of your players at the top of the three-point line. That meant the defensive player had to be at the nail, right at the free throw line. They could cross over. And the other player would have to be outside the lane. And we would play 3 on 3 on this side. And we isolated 2. So that means your best 3 players were on one side and you were playing isolation ball all night long until the team makes you do something different. So it's a lot of things that have happened. But I do get disappointed when I see a team comes down, they shoot a 3, miss. The other team goes down, shoot a 3, miss. Come back down, shoot a 3, miss. Shoot a 3, miss. Like, okay. Yeah. You still can drive the ball, or you can do like the kid from Oklahoma City. You can still do 2 dribbles and pull up for a jump shot. Little things that you can still do, and they don't seem to get it because they're so fixated on shooting a 3-point shot. Yeah. That's a bad shot, but to the detriment of the NBA, I think.
I miss the traditional big men. Think about the 90s as Shaq and Hakeem and a lot of those guys, and Patrick and Alonzo. And I miss seeing that big man just dominate down low, and, you could get it down to him, and he don't need a whole lot of dribbles to get a move in and get it up. And then you got 2 easy points right there. And I think college, they're starting to realize that you see in the last couple of years, there's still a lot of value in that big man. But, they're using them a little different. But, yeah.
Yeah, the problem is, again, when you coach in high school or junior high school, you have a kid that's 6'10", right? Mm-hmm. Their parents, that person, their uncle, their cousin will just crucify them because they're on the post. Yeah. They should have you outside shooting a 3-point shot. You should be a 3-point shooter. And what happens is they start working on that so much they don't work on their post game. They have a balance between work on your post game, working on the 3-point shot. They just go right to working on 3-point shot, and you don't develop those post basic moves on the post that you used to. So now you get to college, you're lacking a little bit, but at least they might force you. I agree with you. They're doing it more now, and the NBA is pretty much a 3-point game. In the NBA, it's a 3-point game.
That's what's crazy is you got guys. Well, at least they got the NIL now to where they can make money on it. But like a guy like Shibwe, Edie coming out now, like some big men like that. I know Shibwe wasn't that tall, but he played like a good big man, and then he comes to the NBA, and there's not a whole lot of room for him with today's game, and it's a shame because his game was nice.
Yes. You just get exposed on the defensive end also. The big guys in college, because you run so many pick and rolls as opposed to just post-ups, pick and rolls. Now you have to cover out on the court. Then you have to make decisions when they pass the ball. Do you go out to the perimeter? You go inside? Yeah, it makes it a little more complicated for a big guy in today's game.
Yeah, I think that because Edie, for the workouts and stuff, they're trying to show him hitting all those threes, but they don't want to talk about him on defense and is he going to be quick enough to, make those transitions and stuff. And
He won't be.
He doesn't move. Yeah, he don't move around very fast, and so he can hit threes all day long, whatever. But defense is gonna be a liability.
Yeah, but he can be a good. I think he can be a good NBA player, but defensively he would be a liability. Like 99% of the guys really. I think about that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
say that. But yeah, he's so big, and if nothing else, you should watch Jokic. It's like, as we know, he's an unbelievable player, but he scores a lot of points in the paint.
Yeah, I do enjoy watching him because it's not as much like the new stuff. He does his own thing. He don't care, you know.
Yeah, he scores a lot in the paint, which means there's an opening for someone that can score, and that teams make it a priority for them to score on that block. And Edie could be one of those players. Of course, on the defensive end, that's the price you pay sometimes for every player, because they're going to find that weak link. And when I coached in the NBA, guess what percentage of players were weak links defensively? What do you think? 10%, 15%?
I'd say probably 50.
Because if you get a screen and a switch, then I mean you go from, let's say you're 6'2" and you go to having to guard 6'6" and above or whatever. Even if you're good, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably 70% of guys that when you do your scouting report as a coaching staff, you're gonna have at least one. You're gonna have at least 2 or 3 that definitely you're gonna have to say, "Wow, these situations we have to avoid it." And then you still have another 40% of players just not good defenders. They're just not. They just learn how to be in college, and they're not going to learn to be in the NBA. They can't contain someone. They don't understand scouting reports and so many things. So you look at 70% of players that will struggle on the defensive end. So Edie would just fit right in. That's the bottom line. When people start talking about defensively, how they're going to do, I'm like, well, they'll do like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got everybody. I mean, this season has been pretty crazy where you've got so many people have dropped 40 and 50 in a night, and it's just like it's mind blowing. But
I tell you one thing, all the things I'm saying about the NBA, the guys that are playing, they can ball, they can play. I'm looking at some. I watched these games. I'm looking at some players that can play. Not everybody, but the players that are the top players, you're like, oh my goodness, did they just do that move? You know, like you said,
Yeah.
I see that more than I did about 4 or 5 years ago.
okay,
I'm seeing more plays that are like high level NBA plays in today's game today, just say playoffs, than I did 4 or 5 years ago, which that's quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that says a lot too with how you probably dissect a play and everything like that, being such a great defender.
Yeah, I do. It's like when someone goes in for a layup and someone makes a block, and the player that shot the ball was below the rim, and the block was way below the rim, and everybody cheers, and the commentators, "What a great block!" I'm like, my grandkid could have blocked that ball. It didn't elevate. The ball was right in front of your face. Hopefully, you could block. You should be able to block the ball. So yeah, I do dissect the game to that level that I have a different view of a great play.
Yeah,
I have a different view of a great play.
Which a great defender would, I would expect there. So that's makes sense.
Yeah, you analyzing things on a different level, and even as a player, like something happens, you're like, that was really a difficult shot. It looked like an easy shot to the people that watch it.
Yeah,
like somebody might be right outside that lane, and they have a little shot on the edge of the backboard, and they're wide open. It looks like an easy shot, and they miss it. And, I can't believe. I'm like, yeah, I can believe it. Because sometimes when you play easy shots, it look like easy shots to a spectator or fan, you know it's hard to execute certain shots. And you're like, wow, that was a tough shot. That was a tough shot to make. Oh, I see why they missed that layup. The angle was bad. I know it was a layup, but it wasn't the right angle for an easy layup. It looked easy, but it wasn't easy. So that keeps it interesting when you can look at it from that perspective.
So talking about difficult shots, do you have a memorable shot of your own that was one of the most difficult to get off, and like against somebody that you would expect to be a good defender kind of thing? Do you have just a shot in your head that sticks out as or
No.
did you think more of did you care more about your defense than the offense? You scored a lot of points, but you that was your job. You just did it.
Yeah, I scored points. I was an offensive player, even though I was defensive player. I was the leading scorer for the Bucks for some years, not 10 years, but a good number of years. And I worked a lot. It's kind of hard to work on your defense in the summer, even though I did work on my conditioning, but you work a lot on your shooting and your offense. But the only shot I can think of, and I can't even take credit for it, is I played in an all-star game. Someone hit the ball and it hit off my head on the bucket.
That's hilarious.
It's in a highlight. In a highlight, NBA highlight.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, the ball hit on my head, and people were asking me about it. I don't even remember it during the game. That's how.
It hit you that hard?
No, it didn't hit me hard enough for me to just process. Wow, that was a crazy shot that just went in.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's the only one.
So you have a lot of, whenever I've said this before, but whenever I get to talk to people that are successful in life, not just one area, but in multiple areas, there's a lot of common traits with leadership, how they approach things, how they dissect things, how they coach things. And I see a lot of similarities with that. And so I wanted to kind of talk to you also and transition over to, I know you have a lot of books that you've written. You've been very successful in the business world. One of the first things, me being a little kid, the first time I remember seeing your name, because I was born in '87, so I watched a lot of your games after the fact, right? But I remember seeing your name on that dealership, and so I knew you were a successful businessman as well. So, take us into that. Like, how did you make that transition, and then what got you into writing books? And it seems like it all layered together, and you're mentoring, you're building leaders of tomorrow, and you're helping team building cohesion for different groups and organizations.
That's a good question, because I don't think I was a great businessman. I think I'm a very creative person, right? I think that's my strength is being creative. And I was very good at starting. I've started 5 dealerships. I was very good at starting a dealership. I was poor at managing a dealership. So my strength was always the thrill of getting something started, like entrepreneurship, just getting it started, because I relied a lot on me. Even though you still have to rely on a lot of people, but you have to rely on a lot more people when you're running a dealership, right? As opposed to starting one. And I remember my attorneys telling me, well, you really need to find something that's going to cash flow and make money, because you can't play basketball forever. I'm like, you can't, back then. Because you really think when you're playing basketball, you can play forever. You don't really, you're a super person, a superman, superwoman. You're like, oh yeah, I could do this. And you forget that the average career of an NBA player is 3.3 years, right? You forget that. But at some point it becomes a reality. Dang, my career is coming to an end. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I kind of had that aha moment. And a friend of mine, Mac McClarty, was this friend of mine. And I remember my attorney saying, you should consider a dealership. It's a good business. It's high risk, but it's high reward, and it certainly provides income. And I remember visiting Mac. A friend, Jack Caldwell, owns a dealership in Conway, and it was a dealership in Stuttgart, Arkansas that was for sale. So I talked to Mac. Mac said, well, you talk to Jack. Jack's a good operator. So I visited Jack. He said, well, Sidney, it's a tough business. He said, but you know what? If you're going to, it's going to be tough anyway. So you might as well have struggles with a bigger dealership than a small dealership. Either way, it's going to be a struggle. And so I talk to people about relationships when we do my workshops and my books. I'm having my car repaired at a dealership in Little Rock. And the dealer came up to me and said, they're opening a new point. A new point means a new dealership that's not owned by anybody, just nothing there in North Little Rock. And they're looking for a certain type of owner. Why don't we go in together and bid for it? So we did. We went in and they said, well, we like you, but we don't want him involved. So I had to do my first difficult thing as a person and just tell someone I can't do this with you. They're not going to do the deal if you're in the deal. Yep. And that was like something I had to do. But we were able to. I went to a GM school for about 2 weeks. My brother Ed Barrett, he helped me do all. We bought the land, we got the equipment, hired people. We rocking and rolling. 1987 opens the first dealership. About 2 years before I retired. And so I was there a little bit, of course, playing basketball, and then I'll come back in the summertime and work it. But I'm a strange person because nothing catches my attention for too long. Like, after a while, I need another challenge. So in between that time, I probably had owned 5 dealerships. Maybe 2 did very well. 3 caused me to go bankrupt. One of those kind of things. But they did okay, and they're such a financial drain if you're not paying attention. I told someone I was not paying attention. That was not what my mind was for, right? Because you have to be detailed, you have to be right. That's not me. I'm a mover shaker. I like to create new concepts, write new books. I didn't know that then, but I found out over time that my strength was coaching, and not just that it's coaching basketball, it's coaching people. And so I went from went to the NBA, coached in college first, and then went to the NBA and coached overseas a little bit. I like this coaching stuff. However, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm an independent spirit. I don't really like people telling me where to be, how to be there, what time to be there. I could do it, and I did it, but it wasn't my best life. It wasn't my best life. And I just decided that I needed to find a business that fit my personality and things that I wanted to do. And professional development and leadership, team building, entrepreneurship, DE&I, career readiness, those things, I can create workbooks, I can write books, I can do presentations, and it's just fun. You see that you're impacting people, young people and adults. And I can do it when I get ready. When my client wants me to be there, I can be there.
There you go.
I'm not just there every day doing the same thing. That's not who I am. And dealerships are like that. It's that type of grind, and that's not my personality. Over the years, so I wrote my first book in 1989. No, I'm sorry. Well, I wrote my first book in 1990. Big book called My Journey to the NBA. Big book. Myra McClarty, she's from Arkansas, and she wrote my first book in 91, big book. And then I wrote my first other book in 2000, maybe 2000 something. And I had just come back from China. It was 2009. And God, I had so many experiences. I was like, God, you have so many experiences, some good, some not so good. People say you only have 9 lives. I don't think that. I think you have as many lives. You have as many times to fail as you want.
There you go.
Not that we're saying we're trying to fail, but if you fail, you should just feel like your life is over. You should keep trying. So my first book was going to be something like who thought we had 9 lives, but I named it Reinvent You. Your passport to reinventing you. I just tell a short story about all the things I had done. Every time I had to reinvent who I was, right? If you're going to have a great life, you just can't just be, you have to keep reinventing. So I went from that book And who would have thought, it's 15 years later, I would have written, this is book number 12. Book number 12 right here is Get Off the Bench, Get in the Game. And it's a very interesting book. And you always say, this is my best book.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
always say, oh, this is my best book. Right. You said that about the last book. It was crap. No, this is it. But this is a good book, good read. And I'm a private person, and the more personal stuff you put in your book, the better the book becomes.
Yeah.
My problem is I don't like to put too much personal stuff in my books, but this one I did from a time. I talk about when I was in elementary, junior high school, and in elementary school, and how I discovered basketball. And the book is about getting off the bench in life, not just. It could be a sports book because it has some sports principles, but it's really a book about life in the workplace. And so I talk about when I was a bench warmer in school and what it took to get off the bench and what it took to get back on the bench. It's kind of funny. You get off the bench in junior high school, I talk in the book, and then what happens? You go to high school, you were just a great junior high school player, and now you're back where? On the bench.
Yeah.
Okay, you get off the bench in high school at Hall High School, and you're this great high school player, and then you go to Arkansas, and where are you? Back on the bench. Then you become this all-American basketball player at University of Arkansas. You go to the NBA, the highest level you can ever play. And where do you end up to start off? On the bench. So every level of our lives, as we go up against better competition, we might be off the bench. We might be the hot stuff. And then at some point, we're no longer the hot stuff. We have to keep getting better, right? Keep reinventing ourselves. Keep learning new principles, new fundamentals in life. So that's what this book is all about, and it's been fun. And my next book, I've written 3 books in 3 years. My books are really small. I mean, it's nothing. It's just good reading. And I had a call from my daughter-in-law saying that my son wants to I told you all that he wants to write a book about entrepreneur. So I had 2 books projects on my mind. I had a leadership book. I had a book called The Innocent Child about how we need to view our kids when they're teaching them at school or in the community. So I'm going to put those on the back burner because it'd be so much fun to do a book
Oh,
about
man, that'd be
grandkids,
awesome.
you know? So
That is exciting.
yeah, it's a children's book. So that's on my schedule as of today. And I'm really good. Once I say I'm doing a project, it will be done in a timely manner. So that's my project. It's a children's book with my grandkids.
That's awesome.
About entrepreneurship.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Man. Hey, I think you're an awesome person to get out there and put out stuff on leadership as well, because you've spent all those years practicing followership under great minds, and then you became a leader, and the amateur level and the pro level at the highest level you could do, right? And then so now you're giving that knowledge out to people through these books and also through public speaking and everything, and that's an exciting thing. And I just wish you continued success, and I'm excited for you to be able to write a book with your grandkid as well. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that, That's awesome.
Yes. And they can go to SidneyMoncrief.com to get, this is a book I have in inventory. So if they want keynote speeches or workshops, they can go to SidneyMoncrief.com.
Man, that's awesome.
Look at what we do.
Copy that. So SidneyMoncrief.com. You can not only get his books, but you can also, if you want to book him for your business to try to get everybody working better as a team and things like that, you can hit him up. Hey, Sidney, I know you're a busy man, but thank you so much for your time today. It was so exciting for us to be able to talk to you and hear your thoughts on so many things, and I just really appreciate you taking the time out today for us.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm going to run out. I need to make it to the gym, make it back home, and then go out to Barnes & Noble for a podcast.
Awesome.
Book signing.
Take care.
Keep kicking butt.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Good pig.